And while I introduce Craig, just a second. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Okay, I'm back. All right. Craig is an award-winning expert on the application of lean, agile design thinking, human systems to both knowledge and project-based work and to more high-volume transactional work in the public sector. As a public servant and founder of Lean Agility, Inc., he has reduced wait times by up to 95%, increased capacity by up to 200%, and dramatically increased engagement using virtual approaches. He is the director of Lean programs at the Telfer Center for Executive Leadership at the University of Ottawa. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Craig.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. And I'm looking forward to sharing this topic with you folks. So over the years, I've noticed that a lot of the training that we take in the field of Lean and Six Sigma and design thinking, a lot of it is on the technical side. It's how do I create a client or customer client journey map? How do I create a value stream map? Those kinds of things. And I think that's interesting and it's really necessary. But I've also found in my own experience, I'm now a recovered public servant, but I spent about 20 years of my career in government. But what I found is that a lot of projects don't get the kind of results that we'd like them to get. And we're going to dig into two particular elements that are really key to successful projects or initiatives where we have great, measurable, sustained results that are going to last a long time and really make things better for our citizens, for our clients. So results, not resistance, building buy-in and execution into your transformation projects. Like good change practitioners or Lean Six Sigma practitioners, let's start with a problem statement. John Kotter, the change guru, he wrote that something like between 70 and 85% of major projects don't meet their stated goals. So they set out they have this great objective, but they don't quite achieve it. They fall short. They still celebrate whatever they achieve, but why do they fall short? I've been really, really curious about this. And over the years, I've studied this and worked with organizations and tried to solve some of these challenges we're going to cover some of the concepts that we've learned along the way here in our short time together. So let's take a look. Why do these projects not achieve these great ideas not achieve the kind of results they probably should? Well, one thing that I really want us to look at in our short time here is desire or buy-in. Do the right stakeholders, so the people that need to support the plan and to implement it and make sure it happens, do they support it? Do they really support it? Or is their support sort of an afterthought, desire or buy-in? And then execution, which is basically our ability to get the great ideas put into practice, to get them to try them out, execute it, and make sure that they actually work. So execution is a successful carrying out of the plan itself to get you that result. So I firmly believe you need to have high levels of both to be successful. I was really curious about this. I was wondering, I had been to meetings for years and years. Over the years, I've been to meetings where there's a great idea, and then a great idea, everybody around the table supports it, and then a month later, you have another meeting and it didn't go anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere. Or a great idea, maybe you got great execution, but people don't buy into the great idea or not the right people, so it kind of fails. I was curious about this. So I did. I went on Amazon.com and I did a keyword search of business books in Amazon.com, and I looked at how many books have the keyword strategy in them. Like almost 40,000 have the keyword strategy in them. So that's not a big surprise. Business books a lot of them are about strategy. Then what about change management? So change management, just as a proxy for do the right people support the plan? Do they buy into it? Do you have that level of support? There were only about 10,000 books. And then what about execution or implementation? Around 3,000 books. And doesn't that kind of reflect the way that we think about the public sector generally thinks about change. It's like, oh, we've got to get the right strategy. We put all our effort into the strategy. Then we kind of go, oh yeah, we need to get the humans. I'm just going to get my pointer going here. We need strategy is really important. Oh yeah. And then afterthought, we need to get the humans involved. Let's hire a change management consultant or give some change management training to help people like our new idea. And then by the time we got the people on the bus, we're exhausted. And then implementation, well, I'm sure somebody will implement it. It doesn't really happen. And so I was curious about this, and I'd seen some equations in the past. I kind of modified some things I'd seen in the past to create what I call the results equation. The result that you're going to get, the sustained result you're going to get, is equal to the quality of the idea, the quality of the improvement idea, multiplied by the desire or buy-in of the people doing the work, of the necessary stakeholders to do it, multiplied by your ability to execute. So if you look at this, and if you think about these as percentages, so what's the percentage chance we're going to get that great sustained result? If we have 100% idea, 100% multiplied by, let's say we have 50% buy-in, we don't have a high level of buy-in, 50%, 100% times 50% is only 50%. So if we have a great idea, but low buy-in, only 50% buy-in, it basically cuts in half our result, multiplied by our ability to execute. If we don't execute very well, like say another 50%, what's 50% of 50%? Your R score is going to be 25%. So that's not really healthy. Now, this is not a mathematical equation. It's notional, just to kind of pull these concepts together. But if any one of these three is missing, you're going to get into trouble. Let's take a look at a great idea with great execution where there wasn't great buy-in. Do any of you recognize this person on the screen? This old-timey sepia portrait. That is, if I put the name of the person, the name is Otto Rohwedder. Otto Rohwedder was an Iowan, a jeweler, and he invented this machine. Does anybody recognize this machine? You probably don't. And this is the product that machine would make. Sliced bread. He invented the first industrial bread slicer so that sliced bread could be on your grocery shelves. And about 30 years after this thing was invented, I don't know if you've ever heard of clean made bread, but I certainly hadn't before I went on the internet and found that picture. But basically, the guy that invented sliced bread, that concept, that saying, it's the best idea since sliced bread. Well, the guy that invented sliced bread, the idea didn't take off until somebody who was able to understand, well, what's the benefits of this? Let's convey those. Let's get people interested in it. The people at Wonder came up with the idea of, okay, sliced bread. They figured out how to market it, and in a very short time, this went to about 50% of the bread sales in the U.S. So even if you don't have great buy-in, you have a great idea, it may not go anywhere. What if we have a great idea, but then don't execute very well? This one, we have to go back in our memories a little bit to an early iPhone. I don't know if you remember, but Apple has some fans. They have some serious fans. Apple was trying to create, they were using Google Maps in the iPhone. And that wasn't very handy to them because if you wanted the other apps to connect to the mapping or GPS function, it wouldn't work very well. So Apple decided they're going to create their own Maps app. So Apple, great buy-in and usually great at execution, great idea. They didn't execute it so well this time. Let's take a look at what happened to Apple when they had this great idea of Apple Maps, a fully integrated map function inside of the iPhone, and they didn't execute. Here's what happened.
Honey, we're lost.
All right, you're right. Hey, there's someone. Let's ask that guy. Sir? Hi. Look, we're totally lost, and we're just wondering if you can give us some directions for using Apple Maps.
Oh yeah, you got iOS 6?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, should be no problem. You're gonna want to key in the destination address and city, and if that doesn't work, which it probably won't, type in the destination address, city, and zip code. And if that doesn't work, address, city, state, zip code, country. Refresh. Refresh again. And then that's not going to work, so type in the zip code and Starbucks.
Starbucks?
Yeah, you're going to want to find a Yelp promoted listing somewhere nearby where you're going. So you can do Starbucks in the zip code. And then if that doesn't work, try Chili's. If that doesn't work, try Kohl's. If that doesn't work, try Famous Footwear. And then if that doesn't work, you're going to want to try Olympia Sports.
Olympia Sports.
And once you find something that works, it still might tell you to go the wrong way down a one-way. Don't do that. Or it'll tell you to go directly into a body of water. Don't do that. Now, it might tell you to drive on railroad tracks or on a shipping dock. Don't do either of those. You're going to want to stick to roads you can physically see.
Yeah, it's got the car right on a railroad track. That
A couple other tips. It might tell you that the Chrysler Building is in Weehawken, New Jersey. It is not. It is in Manhattan. And it might look on there that the Holland Tunnel is an above-water bridge, but it is in fact a below-water tunnel.
Still a tunnel, huh?
Ah.
So, you got all that?
Yeah. You know, that was a lot easier than everyone on the internet said it would be.
All right. So I think that's funny. I find that little sketch funny because we're so accustomed to Apple executing well. They actually do develop products and they execute them really, really well. So when Apple messes up, it's quite surprising. So just an example of, if you don't have all three of those elements, a great idea, great buy-in, and great execution, you're not going to get the great result. So we're not going to get into the great idea. There's so much training. There's so many other probably speakers talking about coming up. How do we come up with the great idea? Let's look into the D score, the desire. How can we increase that? And the E score for execution. Now, I'd encourage you to try to apply this to a project or an initiative. It doesn't have to be a lean project or transformation project. It could be any initiative. Think about that and make your notes as you go along. Think about what would your score be in this equation today? If you executed it right now, what would your score be today if you didn't improve your D score or E score? And I bet if you really think deeply about it, especially if you're going through this content, you might see, hey, my score is a lot lower than I thought. There's a few things I'll need to work on here. So make your own notes and think about how you might improve. So your R score, what is your R score? What's the quality of your idea? As 100% is 1.0, 50% is 0.5. I times D times E. What is your score? Most people's initiatives, when they take the full day course version of this, they say their result score is between 25 and 50% because the buy-in is not nearly where it needs to be and their execution isn't that realistic. All right, let's start with the first topic. Let's go into buy-in or desire. In the chat, can you type in the chat? Look at this picture on the screen. How can you tell that I photoshopped this picture? How can you tell that this is a fake picture? Type in the chat. How can you tell this is a fake photo? Look closely at it. What about it is fake? Let's see. What are you coming up with here? I'll see what the logo. Yeah, the logo. Absolutely, the logo. Notice the logo. There's no soap or water on the logo. So clearly what I did was I just got a picture of a car in a car wash and then clipped the Hertz logo and put it on top. So you see there's no soap or water on top of that. So that's how you can tell it's a fake photo. Here is how else you can tell it's a fake photo. In the history of the world, nobody has ever washed a rented car. So nobody's ever washed a rented car. Now, if we got a group of, I see 491 people on this call. Well, of the 491, I'm sure there's probably 10 people that have. But generally speaking, people do not wash a rented car. And why is that? And I think the reason is people don't wash a rented car because they don't own it, right? If you don't own it, you're not going to take care of it. So making sure that whatever the great idea you have is, making sure that it's owned by the right people is really, really critical, which might mean you've got a great idea in your head. And if you just go and implement it, you're going to be imposing it upon other people. So let's think about how can we create buy-in and make sure the ownership of the idea is owned by the right stakeholders. So just taking our own expert opinion and saying, here's the solution, go ahead and implement it. It's unlikely to get a high level of buy-in. And I also like this quote. President Harry Truman once said, "It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And it's really hard sometimes not to want to get the credit yourself if you're the facilitator or the leader of an initiative or leader of a working group to try to solve a problem. And we see it all the time with people who just graduate from green belt or maybe even black belt, and they go, I'm here to lean you. I'm here to lean you out. Well, that doesn't work very well because it doesn't build the level of buy-in that we're going to need in order for the right people to create the right ownership so that those solutions people actually carry through with them and actually execute them. So the point I'd like to make here is that the more that the initiative you're working on is owned by the people you're working with and their leaders, the more likely it is to be successful. The higher that desire or buy-in score is. Otherwise, they're going to see it as your idea. They'll be a bit resistant often to try the thing out. All right. So if we think about who are those people that we might want to create the ownership in, we might want to think about who should be our first followers. This is a little video. It's a 3-minute video about creating a movement in just 3 minutes. And the concert or the festival you're going to see, I believe, was in Washington State. This is an old, grainy cell phone video, well before those great Apple cameras. Not that I'm doing a plug for Apple, but you're going to see it's kind of dated. But it's really cool to see how a movement gets made in less than 3 minutes at this music festival.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Pretty cool, huh? So you think about it. That movement began with one person who reached out to the next people, who reached out to their people, who reached out to their people, and so on. It's really similar to the way I find it's really similar to the way that people adopt technology. So maybe you might use Instagram today rather than Facebook. But if you've seen the movie, the Social Media, who were the first group of Facebook users? They were students at Harvard University, right? At Harvard. And who were kind of the second, who was next? So those first people at Harvard made it cool or interesting for other Ivy League students to start using Facebook. And then they made it cool or interesting as they go up the adoption curve. They made it cool or interesting for teens or high schoolers and for 20-somethings and 30-somethings. And 30-somethings made it easier, safe for 40-somethings and 50-somethings. And the laggards, when you get to the end here, what's the fastest growing group of Facebook users today? Some might say cynically it's bots. But well, let's say it's probably seniors. Here's our trailer in Arizona. This is our little granddaughter and her puppy. They stay in touch with their diaspora. But if you started with the seniors, you wouldn't have gotten there. So think about it. For your change initiative, who would be those first followers that would follow you, that would make it safe or interesting, or influencers who would bring other people along in the movement? Because if we try to bring everybody along at the same time, we're not going to be successful. Or if we start with the wrong group, we won't have the same amount of impact. Something else to think about in creating followership is addressing what we call natural attractors, or the what's in it for me. There's a little video, there's a tag to a little video in the corner. John Scherer does a great talk on this, but I'll just summarize it really quickly. A lot of people think of the getting people to change. It's like tossing rocks. It's like throwing rocks. Sort of like saying, here's a change project, right? If I've got a pile of rocks over here in this corner of the room, and I want to toss them over to that corner of the room, I would toss them and they'd go stay over there. But humans aren't like rocks. They're like birds. If you toss a bird, is it going to go over there where you want it and stay over there? Probably not. What would you do to get birds to go over there and stay over there? Well, you put bird seed or something that would attract them. So when you're working with your sponsor or your boss or whoever it is on a change initiative, think about it. What's in it for me for each job group that's involved in the change? And if there's something really compelling for them or something that would really attract them, that might be something that gets them to want to get on the bus and to join you in this initiative, and frankly, create ownership on their part. So they really want to go for it and bring others along. So you might want to think about it. The answer might be different by job group. Sometimes you see that, you have, okay, if we can improve this process, make it go 80% faster, we will have also freed up some capacity. So if we have that freed up capacity, maybe we could do some stuff that we're not doing today. Often when you talk to people in administrative type roles, they're interested in, I want to fix tools. I want to get time to write down procedures, or I want a career path to get a different kind of job. I want the opportunity for more training. That might be a natural attractor that if you include that as one of your objectives to use with your found capacity, great. Analysts might be interested in doing benchmarking or doing research with other jurisdictions. Those are things that are really compelling that might get them to be part of that adoption curve. Now, once we've got an idea, how we communicate it is also a great opportunity to create really high levels of buy-in and to make sure that we've got the right people on the bus. However, we run into a challenge when we try to communicate our idea. Our idea is in competition with so many other ideas. Our improvement idea or improvement project or initiative, it's competing with so many other things. So how do we get our idea to stand out from all those others? And I've learned this the hard way. I used to think that just a compelling elevator pitch would be enough. But that isn't enough because you're competing with so many other things where people could choose to spend their time and leaders could choose to invest. So what I found was that if instead of starting with here's the benefits of the idea. Instead, maybe if I start with a question, there's a question that could be the breakthrough in terms of creating buy-in. And here's the question. When I worked at the Canadian Mint. So for years, I worked at the Canadian Mint. I was a vice president. I was in charge of lean. I was in charge of quality, a bunch of other things. And I had a bunch of black belts on our team that would go around, they'd work, they'd see what was going on in different parts of the organization. And then I'd have a meeting with a vice president, each of the vice presidents and the CEO, the president, once a week. I'd have like an hour with each of them. And in that one-on-one meeting, I'd come to them with a list. Here's all the problems we've seen in the last week that we can help you solve. And I'd kind of get this kind of lukewarm response. I'll get back to you, but they wouldn't really get back to me. So, we'd get some stuff done, but it didn't really go very well. So I had a coach at the time and I asked my coach, well, why is this happening? She says, well, maybe you're starting with the wrong approach. Instead of saying, here's what I can do for you, why don't you try to figure out what's keeping them awake at night? So my next meeting with the chief operating officer, I went to her and I said, Bev, instead of giving you a list of ways that I can help you this week, I'm going to ask you a different question. Here's the question. What's keeping you awake at night this week? And Bev was one of those people that she would send emails to people at 3:30 in the morning. She literally couldn't sleep and she'd be sending emails all through the night. And I was like, wow, that's not cool. So what's keeping you awake? And this was like way back. Do you remember the financial crisis of 2009? The Mint is a producer of gold bullion. And in the financial crisis, when there's a lot of financial uncertainty, people run to gold. They buy a lot of gold. And she said, here's my problem. This is what's keeping me awake, is that there's an almost unlimited amount of demand for gold, but we can't produce it. We can't keep up with the demand. So I want to buy some more machinery, but I can't keep up. And I said, well, you got a capacity problem. She said, yeah. I said, well, look, I think if we got a little team together, maybe we could increase your capacity by half in just a matter of a few weeks. She says, are you serious? She picks up the phone. She calls Sean, her senior director, and says, Craig's going to your office right now. Whatever you're doing, drop it. We need to increase our capacity. So sure enough, 3 weeks later, they had doubled the amount of gold bullion being produced at the Mint without adding any machinery or any people. That opportunity never would have shown up if I gave her my list of here's the problems we can help you with. Instead, going to her and identifying what kept her awake at night was really, really important in order to make sure that she had full buy-in, and this was something she would see through and make the appropriate investment and sustained investment in. So I really encourage you to think about who do you need to get on the bus in terms of buy-in, and think about what's keeping them awake at night. Even ask them, and you might find there's some breakthroughs where you can really help them. And I mentioned elevator pitch. Don't dismiss that, but I think an elevator pitch is really useful to really crystallize the problem. And an elevator pitch is just, here's what you should know about this and the time it takes to go from the first floor to the third floor. You've really crystallized it down. The idea here is that if you can crystallize the value of your improvement idea, and it can be conveyed verbally from one person to another in a short elevator ride, then it's more likely to create a movement than, say, a 12-page memo or a 40-page PowerPoint presentation. And sometimes the elevator pitch isn't it isn't actually a paragraph. It's not a set of bullet points. Sometimes it's a visual. This is a visual of an organization we worked with. When they would get a memo to their most senior executive, it would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So I'm going to give you a little setup here on this. This is Project DG, the head of a very big project over here. This person, there was a lot of change going on in this organization, and he says to the director of this big transformation project, "Hey, I need a 2-page article to post on our intranet to tell people what the changes are that are happening in this workplace with this big project. And because they're about to go for the spring school break with their kids, and we want them to go relax and come back and feel recharged. So we want to put their minds at ease. So please, can you write me and publish a 2-page intranet article on the changes that are happening? What are the human impacts? Here's a little elevator pitch for the problem. Okay, watch this. All right, wait for it. They started it in mid-February and they published it in mid-November. So, and when you actually made that invisible experience visible, you realize there were 97 handoffs. This is a 2-pager, 97 handoffs, over 9 months of elapsed time and over 100 hours of effort. And what did the organization learn? Nothing, because it happened in slow motion and invisibly. But when you make that visible, suddenly you've got a great elevator pitch where people look at that and they go, I'm really angry about this. I think we're really killing ourselves by doing this. Let's fix this. All right. So elevator pitch, it is important, although it's not the only thing. Now, something else that change agents, I find, naturally kind of avoid, try to kind of shrink away from is objections. And sometimes it seems like it's easier just to kind of, let's just ignore the objections, and our great idea will convince people that, of its value on its own. So those objections, let's take a look at how we might address objections. This is really, 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 really useful for you change agents. I use it all the time. So think about what are the potential objections that we might face, and then prepare for them. So there's a book called Buy-In that John Kotter, change guru that I mentioned at the very start. He wrote a book called Buy-In, How to Deal with Unfounded Objections. So he kind of gives you a little list about how to deal with objections. Because if you don't deal with them up front and publicly and visibly, they will go underground, and they will deal with you later on, usually in execution when you're not ready for them. So number one, make a list of what are the objections people might have to to this change idea or this change initiative. Are they founded or unfounded? Well, if they're founded objections, then we should deal with the substance of them. We should deal with them in good faith. But if they're unfounded, Kotter suggests a method you can use to deal with them and to disarm them so that those unfounded objections don't infect the larger population and create resistance to your movement. So create a forum, hold a meeting, and say, okay, what objections do you have to what might go wrong here? Let's treat it as a pre-mortem. What might go wrong here? And then he suggests you should respond in short, clear, common sense replies, where you're not trying to, someone raises their hand and says an unfounded objection. You're not trying to convince that person, but you're speaking to the large rational population instead. So you're talking to the majority, not the attacker, and really prepare what are those objections and how might I address them when they come up. So actually encourage objections to come up. Now, to help you do that, I'm going to give you a few examples here. There's in the book, he mentions like 4 archetypes or 4 major buckets of unfounded objections that derail great initiatives. Fear mongering, which is amplifying a concern or a fear of a risk beyond all proportion. Death by delay, not a good time. Confusion, it's an objection that nobody understands, but no one feels safe enough to ask to say they didn't understand it. And then ridicule or character assassination. Let's take a look at each of these. Let's say that we have this great idea. We want to create a morning huddle in our team. We're really busy. We want to have a morning huddle so that 10 minutes every morning, same time every day, to get aligned, to make sure that the work is balanced. Some people are really busy. Let's share work with people who aren't as busy. Also to identify our no interruption times so that if you're doing deep work, you don't get interrupted. So some things like that. And just to get aligned, even to deal with health and safety and morale issues, 10 minutes to do that. What might be a fear-mongering objection to this idea of a 10-minute huddle? Well, fear-mongering might be, we've an unfounded objection. We've got so many meetings already. If we added this one extra meeting, we would get nothing done. And if we got nothing done, then we wouldn't be able to deliver our mandate, and they'd shut us down and we'd all lose our jobs. So that's taking something like a little bit of a fear. We have too many meetings and amplifying it beyond all proportion. So you're saying, so the response to that might be, so you're saying that a 10-minute meeting where we're going to free up time is actually going to prevent us, we're actually going to get shut down because of that. Not sure. Death by delay. It's not a good time to do this. Craig, your little huddle meeting idea, it's not a good time for that. October's no good. I mean, we got Halloween. Halloween's coming up this week, so we can't do, what about November? Can we do November? Is there any reason why we might not be able to do November? Let's think. Well, it's a short month for one. That's a bit of a problem, right? A short month. So we can't do November. What about December? Well, December's no good. We got the holiday parties. And then how about January? Can we start in January? No, I can't do January because January is, everyone's back from holidays and they're really busy. What about February? No, short month and Valentine's Day. You can't do February. How about March? I don't know. March is kind of like spring break for the kids. It's not a good time. April? No, April's no good. We got Easter. Easter's not a good time to do anything. And what about May? Well, May's not good. We got there's a statutory holiday in May. That's no good. June? No. July, August? No. Forget it. That's summer. What about September? September, that's no good either because people are just back from vacation. So October? No, we tried October. So you're basically saying there's no good time to do anything. Right. So that's what the death by delay looks like. And confusion might be someone puts out an objection, but it's got nothing to do with the issue at hand. Confusion is basically, this huddle meeting idea, that new state law they just passed on environmental protection. I don't think we can do the huddle. And nobody understands the connection between this law and the huddle. So, and there's not enough psychological safety to speak up. So we go, okay, let's come back to this some other time. And then last one, ridicule, character assassination. A huddle meeting in the morning. Isn't that what they do at Walmart every morning? We're not Walmart. That's crazy. Then if you said, well, what if, you're saying that anything Walmart does we shouldn't do, like pay our people, or, that's, you can just highlight some of the ridiculousness of the objection. All right. So deal with those objections up front and proactively. Now, something else you might experience as a change agent is that you don't have authority. You can't just say this is the new way and people are forced to do things the new way. That is not you're not able to do that. So what can we do if we don't have authority, if we only have influence? How can we be effective if only we have influence? So let's take a look. There's this model called the influence without authority model, and it's really, really powerful. I'd really encourage you to take a look at it. And I'll just give you an example of how it works. So there's a handful of steps that you'd go through when you're trying to get someone to be open to a new idea. Number one is assume that person is a potential ally. And then number two, clarify what you want out of the relationship. What are you trying to achieve with that relationship? And then look at the world of the other person and figure out, well, what's important to that person? And what is the currency that I have that might be of value to them? And then offer that other person some value without them asking for it. Give them something that would be useful to them, that would be useful to them. And then because you've helped them out without asking for anything, they're going to be more open to a conversation back and forth. I was coaching quite some time ago, around 14, 15 years ago, I was coaching somebody that's a very senior public servant, that didn't like this guy that I was coaching, thought he's too techie for her. She was, she'd pour you tea when you came in her office and all she wanted to talk about literature. And this guy came out of IT and he wasn't that one of those people, didn't like him. So she was trying to get her, who ran an important region, to do a lean event, to pilot a concept. To pilot a concept that could be then tried out nationwide. And so he said, what I need from her is I need her to give me a week of a team's time in her region to do a Kaizen or an improvement event. And that'll start this big ball rolling. So he looked at her world and said, well, what does she need that I might have? And what currency does he have? He realized that she was trying to solve a problem and needed a very specific report in order to solve a problem. She was having a really difficult time solving this problem without data. And he was a data genius, literally data genius. So he knew what the report was, and he did some data dumpster diving and created a report, sent it to her and said, hey, Rebecca, I heard you were interested in this. Let me know if you have any questions or if you want to chat. She reads it and goes, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want. Called him up to thank him, and then invited him to meet her the next time that he was in her town. And wouldn't you know it, she said he was able to ask, hey, could I get a week of a team's time in your region to try this thing out? And not only did they do that, it became a super home run and radically improved the delivery of this service, but this is the crazy part. A year from their first meeting, the first conversation, she actually invited him to Christmas dinner at her house, which was absolutely crazy because she did not like him at all. All right. So think about it. In terms of desire in your initiative, what would your D score be before you tried some of these things out and after? Do you have an improvement? What are the gaps that are left? So that's desire. Just some thoughts about what you can do around desire. Let's turn our minds to execution now. No one seems interested in execution because it's not glamorous, unlike, running a great workshop and being a hero. Well, one of the problems that we run into in execution, particularly in process improvement projects, is that the finish line is in the wrong place. A lot of people think the finish line, you're done when you've got a PowerPoint presentation that says, okay, here was the problem, and here's what we propose to do for solutions. A lot of people think that's the finish line, but it's not the finish line. Here's an example of not really realizing what
Ben Payne, and followed by Scott Overall from Great Britain. And boy, you talk about
is going fast. He can catch him.
During the Atlanta Peachtree 10K race, Olympic qualifying marathon runner Ben Payne started celebrating his victory a little too early. and was beaten by British Olympian Scott Overall.
Who was it?
As Ben was gesturing number 1 with his hand, Scott ran through the finish line and won by only 9/100ths of a second. Scott tweeted, "Pleased to take the win today at the Peachtree 10K. Always run through the line."
All right. I love that video because this team celebrate. Hey, we got a bunch of solutions. But, until we've actually tried them out as experiments on real life work, we don't know if they work or not. And we haven't accomplished anything except some nice ideas, some vaporware, I guess you'd call it in the software community. It doesn't exist. You haven't solved the problem. So you haven't proved the concept and you haven't integrated it into the way that the work is done. So it ain't over till it's over, like that Bears game on the weekend. Precisely. Okay. So the finish line's too early. So the finish line, let's make sure it's in the right place. It's actually once we've run the experiments and we've proven the concept and it's been scaled out. Something else we might want to think about is who's on our team. So if you hopefully you're not doing this change initiative on your own. Hopefully you're engaging with people who do the work and they're leaders, and you've got a team made up of those people. And so some of the attributes you might look for might be you want those first followers, the dancing guy on the hill. You want the first followers who are going to convince other people to try this out. You want innovators. You want doubters. You don't want a room full of doubters, but you want a couple doubters because they're highly convincing when they start becoming advocates or proponents. And you also want people who get things done. Innovators are great blue sky thinkers, but they're often not that really good at getting things done. And then maybe clients and even middle management. So think about who you want on your team. You need some people that have that execution gene. And really important as well, I think, to make sure that you've got middle management involved. Often, we've got people at the ground level that are really excited, and we've got the most senior executives. We've got the director of the agency interested. But then there's these kind of supervisors or managers in between that we're like, they're not important, but really they are. It's like a chain. If we don't have their support, this thing probably isn't going to get executed. So we need to make sure that middle managers are co-owners of this. As well, something else we might want to do is make sure that we're really focused and that we start implementing our experiments quickly. We don't let a lot of time elapse. The city and county of Denver, I learned this from them. They have this term they call the cost of hesitation, and what they've observed is that the amount of impact that an improvement has, there's a real tight connection between the impact of the improvement and how much time elapsed from the day that improvement was identified to when they actually tried it out. So what they saw was this really diminishing curve where the quick wins that they implemented, they actually had the vast majority of their measurable financial impact, positive impact, was in quick wins. The larger initiatives that were harder to do, they didn't get those things implemented. Why? Because it took a long time for those to be implemented. So the longer it takes to implement an initiative, the less likely we are to succeed. Here's an example of that. There's a guy named Jerry Weinberg, a computer scientist. He took a group of coders and he gave them multiple things to work on. And he said, okay, let's see how productive they are. You give a coder one project, they got 100% of their capacity to work on it. They don't lose any capacity due to switching. But as soon as he gave coders a second assignment, what he found that for the two assignments, they didn't have 50% of their capacity for each. They were losing 20% of their capacity from switching. And in coding, what does that look like? Well, I'm working on one thing. I realize I got to switch to the other. I switch to the other. I got to reread it from the start, and then I can get back into it. So 20% of their capacity are about 6 hours a week. And when the coders had 5 different things they were working on at the same time, they found that 75% of their capacity spent on context switching, and each initiative is only getting 5% of their capacity. So if the work slows down, there's a whole bunch of problems that happen to it that don't happen to a really fast-moving project or initiative. So let's take what are some things that happen to imagine a project that takes 12 months. We're going to do 1 day a week over 12 months versus we're going to take 12 focused days and get it done. That 12-month project will have all kinds of problems that wouldn't happen at a 12-day focus project. For example, you'd have you might be overtaken by events. You might get scope creep. People change their minds. New priorities come up. You might have team members depart. You have to onboard new people. So a slow initiative becomes an even slower initiative. Yeah, employee transitions. Alice, we forget what decisions we made 12 months ago. Absolutely. These are things that happen. So what can we do about it? If something is really a critical priority, let's say we've got 3 improvements to implement. If we stretch them out over the course of the year, we're going to get a little bit done in January, a little bit done in February, a little bit done in March, and then theoretically, we'll get our results toward the end of the year. But if we said, let's really prioritize and let's focus on A and get A done, then we compress the amount of time and we'd be able to enjoy the positive benefits of having A completed and then B completed and C completed. And you notice the boxes are smaller in the second scenario because there's less switching. It takes less effort to get the work done. So thinking about just compressing timelines and getting people dedicated time to work on it, run the experiment, get the proof, and then you can scale it out much more easily instead of spreading it out and losing a lot of momentum later on. All right. And also details are important. Maybe, there might be, this is a human resources recruiting process. One of the issues they had in that process was that HR wasn't treating the recruiting like a project. So what they said they're going to do in Excel, they're going to here's a list of all the tasks we need to do with the client. Client does this, HR does that. Here's how many days they have to get it done. And at the bottom, it would say, here's the start date of your new employee. And just to create a simple project plan. Well, they realized that there were actually 10 steps involved in getting that done. And all these little things what issues do we need to solve in the template? Well, let's design a template prototype. Let's discuss it with the team. Let's adjust it. Let's run it with 10 files. Learn what we did, make further adjustments, communicate it, go live, and then review it 60 days later. In total, that's about 30 hours of effort. So they're being honest with themselves about the amount of effort, and they actually were able to put things into the calendar. And each one of those experiments can show up on a Kanban board or a visual board to show what our status is. And if you see that we're really far behind on certain initiatives, that means that we need to escalate and move more quickly. Then a couple other things before I adjourn. Just thinking about atomic habits, just designing things so that they're more likely to be used or executed. The book Atomic Habits, I really recommend. There's a little link in the bottom here. You should read this little summary. It's 12 pages. It'll probably save you 12 hours in the next month if you can do it. But basically, James Clear's idea is if you make it obvious what the new way of doing things is, make the new way attractive, make it easy to do, and make it satisfying to do, then you're probably going to be much more successful. So this is a back and forth on a presentation, spaghetti diagram. You saw an example of it earlier. One of the solutions was, let's actually create a presentation request template. So before we start working on it, let's make sure it's really, really clear who's the intended audience of the presentation, what outcome or job to be done are we trying to create, who's it for, what job are we hiring it to do, what event triggered their request, is a presentation the best way to get this job to be done, or are there easier, lighter ways, an email, verbal briefing, memo, data table, infographic, diagram, is there some other way? And who do we need to consult in building this PowerPoint deck? Who must we consult? Should we consult? Could we? And even we don't need to consult. And if you look at the instructions, the first thing it says is this template may save 10 to 20 hours if you use it to start the process. So think about the concept of making it attractive for people to use. So this is why you should do it right at the very top. To make it easy to use, they've actually given the different options for people so they wouldn't have to recreate them or rethink them each time. So using some of these concepts can help make a tool like this really take root and be much more likely to be implemented. Last piece of content I want to share with you is simply this, pre-mortem. Now, before you go too far into your project, do a pre-mortem. What are the consequences? What could go wrong? What could go right and what could go wrong? Based on what's the impact of the thing that could go wrong and what's the probability of it happening. You can put a desire, buy-in, and execution into your pre-mortem, and then come up with some countermeasures before you get far into your project so that you're sure to be more successful. All right, so think about it. In your own initiative, what do you think your execution score is going to be? And are any of these concepts helpful to you? So in terms of my wrap up, and we got a few minutes left just to get your questions or comments. really encourage you to think about that R score. When you whatever initiative you're working on, don't just get stuck on the I or the quality of the idea or the quality of the strategy. Equally important is the level of desire and your ability to execute as well. Three things that you can do that I think you can do next. Number one is if you take notes today, review those and book some time with yourself in your calendar right now. This is an execution tip. Book some time with yourself right now before you finish watching this webinar, and book some time with yourself to actually go and to figure out how you're going to implement those things in your initiative. What are you going to do to close those gaps? And then apply what you've learned from that iteration to your subsequent iterations, so that you're like much more likely to be successful. So that's it for me. That QR code, if you're curious about the stuff that we do, you can go there. But don't hesitate to reach out. My contact information is there if you want to have an informal chat about any specific challenges you're running into. Happy to help. Really want you folks to be successful. So thank you so much for your time today and for the invitation. And I look forward to your comments and questions in the Q&A session. So I'll turn it back to Jeannie for that part.
Thank you, Craig. This has been an amazing presentation. So much good content here. I love the equation. I think that's a great way to explain things to upper management in terms of where you're going to get your return on investment. We did have a couple questions. One is the influencing authority model looks specific to a one-on-one buy-in. Are there any tools for group buy-in?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I love it. So the influence without authority model, it is built for an individual one-on-one relationship to build that relationship and create reciprocity. If you think about a group of people, right? Not everyone in the group is at the same level of influence. Usually in a group, a population, you'll find that there are some people who are the go-to influencers. So think about that group and use the intel you already have, or talk to people from that population or that segment and find out who are the people that other people go to for answers, to go to for advice. And the answers might surprise you. They rarely follow the hierarchy. It's rarely the most senior person in the hierarchy that is the go-to person and has the most influence. Sometimes it's an administrative assistant. Sometimes it's someone who doesn't have a really visible role, but they've been around a long time. People go to them. They're really credible. Work with directly with those influencers, especially within the leadership group. That to me is a way of scaling out that influence without authority model. But you can almost create a social network map. Who influences who in that population, and the people with the greatest number of outward pointing arrows, maybe they're the ones that you might want to start with.
Thank you so much, Craig. I think that wraps up our time for today. So I just want to say thank you to you, Craig, for this wonderful presentation. Thank you to everybody who has attended today. We had over 450 attendees for this session, and that's wonderful. When we close out here, you'll get a quick survey pop up. Again, please take that survey. We've made many improvements based on your feedback. And just want to shout out again to Kelly, our ASL interpreter, and Renee, our CART and live closed captioner. Thank you so much for your services today. And we'll see you back at 11.
Thanks.